Sweet. Hey, it's lovely to see you all. I'm so glad we're here doing this together. Thanks for taking the leap on a, snowy Sunday for some of you, and a cold one for the rest of us. So I'm going to start by just going through some logistics of the retreat, and then we'll have an opportunity for some Q&A too, and just like, if you want to ask any logistics, if you want to clarify anything that I've said. After that, we'll go into what's often called noble silence. And basically, what that means is speaking only as necessary. So, speaking is totally allowed and messaging is totally allowed, but just being very judicious about, okay, is this critical? Is this important right now? That said, I'll also still be talking, and hopefully I'll only be talking as necessary and helpful. That'll be a good practice for me. So we'll see. And then there also will be a chance during this next few hours to connect with me one-on-one if you have some question or you're struggling in some way. And I'm always here at any time during the retreat if something comes up. So, um, okay. So let me ask you again. I asked a few minutes ago, how many of you have done some sort of meditation retreat before? Cool. Great. Yeah, we've still got a nice mix. So today will be oriented towards, even if you haven't done a retreat, this should be there should be enough guidance and comfort. And of course, if you don't feel like that's true, again, I'm here at any point to course correct that. But also, hopefully, for those of you who have done retreats before, this is a really nice opportunity to settle and deepen in a way that you wouldn't normally get to outside of this context. So we're never going to sit longer than 30 minutes at any time. And that's pretty much what we normally do with diabetes sangha sessions. Normally we go between 20 and 30 minutes. Sometimes it's shorter. But most of the time it's 20 to 30 minutes. And sometimes we won't sit 30 minutes. It's not going to be 30 minutes every time. So while we're doing this, and I don't often say this during the actual diabetes sangha sessions, but I'd love to recommend and maybe strongly recommend two things. So the first one is if you can keep your camera on, and it's okay if you can't. Sometimes that happens. There's different life circumstances, and we don't always have the setup or the space to do it. No problem. But if you can keep your camera on, that would be amazing. And it might be that you're like, I don't want this screen to be right in my face for the next 5 hours, which is totally reasonable too. And so you can set the camera up off to the side. You can have a side angle or whatever is comfortable. Yeah, and that's not a hard rule. If for any reason you're like, I really don't want to do that, I'm not comfortable with it for whatever reason, don't worry at all. You can turn the camera off. But I do recommend it. I think it is always supportive. It helps us feel like we're doing this together as a community a little bit more, and maybe is some healthy peer pressure to be fully engaged as well. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to do your best to get physically situated at the start of each sitting period. Um, and then once you're physically situated and set up, do your best to not move for the rest of the time. And again, this is not a hard rule at all. Uh, sometimes you have a big pain that comes up, or, we're all doing this by Zoom. Somebody comes in the room and you have to say something. And so you might not be completely still for the whole time. That's okay. But highly recommend that as best as you can do, notice that as we're sitting, and especially as it gets quieter and quieter, and I'll give less and less instruction, um, you're gonna probably have the urge to move. And I feel like a scratch on my forehead right now. So you'll scratch your forehead and you'll shift in your seat and correct your posture. And these are all completely natural things. As we get quieter and quieter, we start to recognize more thoughts and sensations. And sometimes we don't even realize that we're tapping into them, and sometimes we do. And those additional thoughts and feelings that we're having, um, they can be uncomfortable. And not sometimes in such a big dramatic way uncomfortable, but just subtly uncomfortable. Like, that felt weird. I'm gonna fix that. I'm just gonna make that right. Or yeah, I don't really like that thought. Let me just reset myself in some way. And as best as we can, and I'll talk about this more actually during the talk time, as best as we can, just sit and watch that happen. There's an amazing thing that happens, which is that urge to move or whatever thought or feeling is there, the overwhelming majority of times will fall away and soften. And so that's actually an opportunity for you to go deeper in the meditation practice. So again, it won't always happen. You're gonna end up moving during the meditations a little bit, and that's okay. But do your best to just notice the urge to move around and try to relax when it comes up, rather than tightening up and saying, "Ah, I can't move. I gotta stay completely still." But different, more like relaxed. Okay, those are two of the main logistics. A couple of smaller things. I'll be using a meditation bell. And did my sound just change and get a little weird and funky and different? Oh, that's great. Zoom has improved the original sound. So I'll be using meditation bells during the retreat, especially more and more as I talk less. And I just wanted, you don't need to memorize this or anything. I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'll be ringing it in different ways and it indicates different things. So you don't have to be like, why is he doing it this way or that way at this time? So at the start of every sit, I'll just ring it a few times. Does that sound okay? Cool. And then, especially as I give less instruction, and I'll give you a heads up about this before, but sometimes during the practice, I'll just ring it once. And that's just a reminder to come back. It's just a gentle reminder, a gentle moment to bring you home. And then to close a sit, I'll do a little bit of a roll, and you'll hear that pretty clearly as distinct and different. So it'll sound like this. Does that sound different? All right, cool. So you don't need to memorize those things, but just if you're like, wow, Sam is really going crazy with those bells, he's having a good time over there, you know why. Uh, it's not just for my sake, although I'm probably enjoying it too. Okay, so that's the bells. We talked about noble silence. Um, you can always DM me directly, and if you don't know what that is, feel free to just come unmuted and say right now. But you can always go into the chat and choose my name and send me a message at any point. I think let's avoid using the chat unless there's some. Yeah, actually, let's just avoid using the chat for everybody um, during the retreat. There will be a chance at the end to connect, and I'm really excited for to hear everybody's experience, and we'll get to share with each other at the very end. So it won't be that way the whole time, but in order to let everybody's mind settle a little bit more, and I just had a wonderful example of this in uh, a sutra studies group that I just was in. I was, here. I went there to go listen to a teacher talk about something, and somebody just like kept coming unmuted and really wanted their question to be answered, but then they just kept having more questions, and I was like, "This is not why I came here," and I left, which was actually great because then I had more time before this retreat. But anyways, that's why we generally refrain from speaking out loud or sending messages in the chat, because everybody's having their own process and you don't know what's going to be a trigger or a distraction for somebody. Um, okay. All right. Does everybody have diabetes snacks nearby? Low blood sugar snacks? I've got my apple juice. Cool. Highly recommended. Obviously, we're all pros here, but it's nice to not have to think about it. That's the most important thing. That can be another distraction. All right. And then the last thing I wanted to say before we can open up for some questions or anything that's coming up for you now before we go into quiet mode is retreats can be weird and interesting and boring and terrible. They can be all of the above. All sorts of different stuff can come up. Sometimes really nice, amazing stuff, sometimes really terrible stuff that you didn't want to think about or experience. And I just wanted to normalize that and say, like, it, truly not just saying this, it all actually is completely normal. Um, Normally, half day retreats are more mundane, they're more on the boring side, so I don't want to like set everybody up for an expectation that they're about to, blast off into a mental rocket ship. Unlikely, but I just wanted to say that because you never know what's going to happen when you start to settle your mind and go a little deeper. If for any reason something comes up that's really challenging or difficult for you to hold or work with in your own mind, please don't hesitate to just message me. And we can go into a different breakout room together. We can chat about it a little bit and figure out what the next best step is. So I don't anticipate that happening. Again, I don't want to prime us in any kind of scary way, but I wanted you to know I'm here as a resource, and it's all completely normal. That's all I've got for my part of things. I didn't make any time during this retreat to talk about different ways of sitting, and that's probably would be a good idea going forward. There is some stuff. Obviously, nobody's going to do this right now, hopefully, but there is some stuff on the Diabetes Sangha website about that. So that's always a resource. Um, Especially as we're sitting for these longer sits, I used to feel very differently about this. I was trained in a very rigid and um, hardcore mode of meditation where you're really supposed to sit on the ground and undergo a lot of pain no matter what. And I feel very differently about that now. I'm sitting in a chair right now. I also have to because I'm recovering from an injury, but uh, point being, most important thing is make sure that you're comfortable for the next few hours. Uh, don't let pain or discomfort or an idea of trying to do it the right way be a distraction. Um, they're going to come up anyways. They're going to come up anyways, so no need to bring them on. And then when you get sleepy, which will naturally happen if you get too comfortable, then you can course correct there. Caffeine is also wonderful for retreats. So, all right. Anybody else have anything that they wanted to raise or questions or comments? Cool. Let's take just a little 3 minute break. We can go off video, whatever, and let's come back at the 20-minute mark and we can start our first meditation. See you guys in a sec. I'll ring the bell just to bring people back in case they're in the other room. I'll go for it because I have a little more to blabber on about anyways, so the rest of everybody will come back. First of all, I just wanted to say, now that I've calmed down from the initial logistics, it's really amazing to be doing this together with you guys. Feels really good. It's really special that we have this diabetes bond, and we don't even need to talk about it necessarily. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit, but it's wonderful to be in community. So before we start practice, I thought I'll just give a few minutes to talk about practice, since there will be less and less instruction over the day today. Many of you have probably heard me talk about the intention, attention, and retention. Intention, attention, and retention. And this is one way that we like to think about mindfulness. That was kind of a use of the royal we. It's like one way that I like to think about mindfulness, but it's, I think, we also as a community. Often we think about meditation practice or mindfulness practice as a practice of attention. We think like, okay, I choose whatever my object is and I just stay focused no matter what. And what I have often said is that what that actually just leads to is tension, and we don't want tension. Attention is okay, but not tension. So what's the difference between this idea of mindfulness as an attention practice and maybe going nearer to the mark and doing this in a way that can actually be supportive and helpful for our lives long term? The difference is intention. And I'd love for us to just frame and think about the practice today as a practice of intention. And what I mean about intention is that intention is how you want to be, whatever happens, wherever your attention goes, whatever difficulty befalls you, whether things are good or bad, intention is how you want to be. And hopefully through a little bit of guidance at the beginning, we'll try to connect to that. What is the intention? What is my felt sense of how I want to be? But the truth is that we can't actually control our attention. We have an idea that we can control our attention and we can influence our attention. For sure, we can influence our attention. But it's only our intention that can influence our attention. We set a direction that we want to go, but often we miss the way that we want to be while we're going in that direction. So please, 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 for the course of this retreat, let the meditation practice be about how you want to be. And whatever we're paying attention to at any given moment will change. But how we want to be with it is going to be hopefully a little more consistent. And then the last part of that is retention, which is just meaning we're always going to slip off and lose it, and then we come back to intention. Okay, with all that said, let's start to practice. So if you're not already, you can situate yourself comfortably. Not too comfortably, especially for these longer retreats. You could end up falling asleep pretty quickly, but comfortably enough. And if you were taking cues off of what I just did with my eyes, I naturally closed my eyes because it's a force of habit. But since we'll be in this space for a few hours, I actually invite you to open your eyes back up and take a look around the room. And as you're looking around the room, just very gently moving your head and letting your eye movements, to the extent that there are eye movements, letting them be slowed and gentle. Maybe a better word would be looking, or seeing rather than looking. Just seeing the room. You're not looking at anything in particular. Just taking it in, letting the light meet your eye wherever your head goes. You might even look behind you for a moment, see what's there. Just gentle moving of your head, of your body. As you feel satisfied and like you have a sense of where you exist in this room, you can come back to neutral. And if you're ready, you can let your eyes come to rest. For some people, that might mean closed fully. For some people, it might just mean eyes softened. Notice that space around your eyes, your forehead, your cheeks. Can it be soft? Can it be heavy? Can it give up on needing to be a certain way? Having a sense of this inside your head as well. Imagining that you can just feel your head from the inside out. And that it can be soft. And your throat and neck, same thing. Might help to imagine that you have kind of a globe or a circle of awareness that's moving down through the inside of your body and sensing out to the surface. And everywhere it goes gets a little softer and a little more alive. Letting the shoulders settle, the arms be heavy. Resting a moment in the upper chest where the heart is. Just breathing gently into that space, breathing gently into the heart. read a quote as we breathe gently into the heart. And perhaps we'll come back to this throughout the practice today. Your grief for what you've lost lifts a mirror up to where you're bravely working. Expecting the worst, you look around, and instead, here's the joyful face you've been wanting to see. Your hand opens and closes and opens and closes. If it were always a fist, or always stretched open, it would be paralyzed. Your deepest presence is in every small contracting and expanding, the two as beautifully balanced and coordinated as bird wings. Rumi. Perhaps right now your heart feels opened, or perhaps it feels closed. There's no problem either way. One breath at a time, we can just give it the gentle supply of oxygen that it uses to nourish the rest of our body. As you rest here in the heart and just breathe into it and feel it opening and closing, opening and closing. Likely you've already begun to encounter thoughts. Perhaps if you look carefully, those thoughts want to take you back up to your head or even some nebulous place above your head, or nowhere at all. No problem that the thoughts are there. We'll just continue to take care with our reactions to the thoughts. No problem that the reactions are there. We'll just continue to take care to the way that we're reacting to our reactions. It would be far too difficult to disarm or settle every single thought or reaction or feeling that comes through. That's not our job. Just being in the heart and reflecting for a moment on how you want to be right here and right now, and anywhere else in whatever circumstance. no right answer here. But what's important is that you can feel the way that you want to be. And that it feels authentic to you right now. Perhaps you want peace or relief. What would that feel like? Maybe you remember a time that you felt this way, or a place that helps you feel this way, or a person with whom you feel this way. Perhaps it's love or compassion. Perhaps it's something else like gratitude or joy or vibrance. There's no wrong answer. Just allowing a feeling to start to emerge in your heart, in your mind, in your body. What is this like this way that I want to be? We can use thoughts or memories or people to help stoke that flame just a little bit. But no need to make it a roaring fire just yet. Just know that it's there. We're not so focused on having such big feelings. Just a gentle presence of your intention, warming your heart, warming your body. Practice is just to sit here with this intention. When your mind quite naturally goes elsewhere, notice the tension that's caused. Maybe some tension in your head, maybe some gripping of your heart or shoulders or hands. The first step is just to let go of tension. It's great to check up any time that we have gone elsewhere, and even when we're not elsewhere. Does my body feel settled? And if not, how can I support it in moving in that direction? So first, let go of tension every time it arises, which will be countless times over the next few hours. Perhaps by this point in the practice, my voice is even causing tension. If that's the case, don't worry, there will be more quiet sits soon. Letting go of the tension over and over, and only once you've let go of the tension, returning to your heart and returning to your intention. And maybe it's there, and maybe it needs a little bit of a poke or a prompt to kindle it again. Perhaps a memory or a phrase that you find evokes this way of being. A million distractions are coming. Just stay as relaxed as possible. Weather the storm, it will pass. And ensure that there's just a little bit of a flame of your intention always there. Doesn't need to be big. Just resting in your own heart for the next few minutes. Even with a task as gentle as this, the mind naturally wants to orient towards doing it right. See if you can let that go. Just sitting here in your heart, however messy your mind might be. every once in a while, you can check in. Is there a way that I can do this even more relaxed? Is there a way I can do this with even less tension? Each little distraction is a guide ready to take you deeper into practice. If you use it as a reminder to settle your body and mind and come back to your intention. Part of your mind will have difficulty believing that it's really this simple. It really is. All that's needed is intention and patience. When and you feel so lost, just coming back to the heart and breathing into the heart. You can even count 10 breaths in your heart if you like. All right. So we'll go right into a moving meditation practice, and then we'll have some break time. Of course, if you need to take a break, you can also do that now. But if you can wait, we'll just have about 10-15 minutes of moving practice. So my recommendation for those of you who can is to have walking practice. That doesn't apply to me right now. So I'm going to show you with my hands what I would like for you to do with your feet. Yeah, and I think Lisa has a good idea. So we'll start by just moving very gently, and I'll guide the process. You can stand up if you're ready now. You can also stay seated until we begin. But once we get into it, we're going to start with just really slow walking. And if you're like me and you're seated, and you'll continue to be seated, then I'll also give some additional ideas. But if you imagine that your foot is like my hand and it's stepping on the ground, which is like my shirt, just start by stepping really slowly, 1 foot at a time, and putting the heel first, and then just feeling the foot roll forward. And then as it starts to roll towards the tip of the toe, then probably you're stepping with your other foot. And then the other foot comes down and just touches with the heel. It slowly rolls forward. And you can just feel the shift of weight, starting with, what does that feel like in my foot? Just 1 step at a time. And you'll find your own pace. There's no right or wrong pace. And we'll probably speed up shortly thereafter. And yeah, some of you have already started. That's wonderful. And if it makes more sense to turn your camera off, that's completely fine. But keeping your camera on is also welcomed. Just gentle footsteps, touching with the heel, rolling forward. And then notice that the other foot just comes and steps at the right moment. So we're starting with, how does this feel in my foot? But then I invite you to start to notice the rest of your body too, without fully losing your foot. It's almost like your brain or your mind is in your foot and it's sensing the rest of your body from there. And from there, what can be more relaxed? What can be more settled? Maybe my shoulders have come up high. Maybe my face is scrunched up because I'm concentrating, quote unquote, concentrating. How can I do the same thing, walking slowly, a step at a time, but a little more relaxed, feeling the weight of gravity pull through my feet? Just the same as seated meditation, thoughts are going to come, and in fact, this is a more active state. So your metabolism will be higher. So likely your thoughts will come more quickly. Just doing the same thing, just relaxing the head, relaxing down into your feet and gravity pulling through them. Can let the thoughts be pulled down through your feet into a well of gravity. And then, in case you weren't balancing enough plates in your mind, now we'll bring our intention in through our feet. So that same intention that you were sitting with in your heart and in your whole body. See if you can let each footstep be an expression of that intention. Teacher Thich Nhat Hanh often said, "Let peace be in every step," or "Peace is every step." Another time he said, "Walk as if your feet are kissing the earth." See if you can work with those. Does that help you embody your intention through walking? And you might play with the speed a little bit. Perhaps you're in a small space, most of us are, and so it doesn't make sense for you to go so fast. But see if you can play with the speed a little bit. What about a little faster? What about a little slower? How does that impact my relationship to my intention? Maybe it helps. Maybe it's a distraction. Just another few minutes like this, on your own, without my instructions. And if you feel mildly crazed by walking in circles or back and forth, just notice that. See if you can let go of that tension too. I remember when I had my bar mitzvah, and the rabbi explained to me that I could just do this, and everybody would stand up, and do this, and everybody would sit down. I was pretty delighted. I thought that was a pretty dangerous level of power. The bell is just one step removed from that, but I promise to use it well. So we can have a little break now. Let's have a break until 20 minutes after the hour. As you're on this break, I think you probably already read in the email or suggestions beforehand, but doing your best to remain in your body and with this intention. It's really, really easy, especially on Zoom, to get up and be like, great, I'm gonna go back and do my normal stuff and be my normal way. And it's inevitable, it's gonna happen. But when you realize it, see if you can check in with your body. Okay, maybe I can settle a little bit. What can be easier, smoother? And how can I be with my intention in whatever I'm doing? Maybe it's, pouring a glass of water. How can I do that in a peaceful or caring or whatever your intention might be kind of way? So that's it. Have a great break. See you guys in 13 or so minutes. So we'll jump back into our practice. And this one will have a fair bit less guidance. So if you're not accustomed to that, just be gentle with yourself. You're going to get lost and mentally tumbled around quite a bit, most likely. Maybe you'll spend the entire meditation period thinking about something else or somewhere else. And it's really no problem. The core of the practice is just how you react when you realize that you've been elsewhere. So just intention, patience, and being really gentle with yourself. Expect that it'll be messy and you'll be all over the place. Start by physically settling your body, your mind. When you feel that you're somewhat relaxed and settled, returning to your intention, breathing it in and out of your heart. And if you like, breathing it up and down your body, breathing it up from your feet to your head, and down from your head to your feet. No need to change your breath to do this. Just letting the mind follow this pattern up and down with whatever breathing feels good. Even very short breath is okay. I'll ring the bell every once in a while, but otherwise just stay with your intention. Notice that things are changing and be gentle with yourself. You will certainly find your rhythm. Just be patient. Don't rush to get there. Letting the body and mind be settled. Gently coaxing the intention to the forefront of your experience. Sometimes it can feel like you're lost at sea. If that's the case, no problem. Just let it be a warm, friendly sea. If you feel sleepy, you might focus on your inhales and take in deeper breaths. If you feel restless, you might focus on your exhales and extend your breaths a little bit longer. let's take a short break until the 50-minute mark. So about 6 minutes from now. And we'll come back for a talk. So I'll ring the bell in a moment to officially start the talk. And my recommendation is that you just treat this like a meditation period. So you don't need to reflect too much on what I'm saying. God forbid you reflect on what I'm saying. But yeah, you don't need to think too much about it. You don't need to take notes. If something strikes you, we'll have a recording and you can always ask for it. My recommendation, and you take it for what it's worth, but my recommendation is just to sit and experience, just the way you already have been. Some of you know that outside of my meditation life, and especially in the past, my background and my work has been in neuroscience, and largely studying and analyzing the activity, the electrical activity of the brain. And it's interesting, it's actually been a big inspiration, or really brought a lot of perspective for me to my meditation practice. And there's so much to say about that. But what I wanted to say first and foremost about that is that when you look at the electrical activity of somebody's brain, it looks like a total and absolute mess. And I mean, certainly that's the case with some of us more than others, but who's counting? But this is kind of the standard mode of being. There's a lot going on. It's very difficult to make any meaning out of what's happening. And so the first thing that you do in recording somebody's brain activity and then later analyzing it, the first thing that you do is you filter the data. And so you try to make it something more comprehensible by separating the noise from the signal. And what does that mean, the noise from the signal? Well, the noise being things that you're not particularly interested in. You weren't intending to look at those. Like if you're looking at somebody's brain activity, maybe it's they're moving their face or something like this. And the signal would be maybe a specific thing that you're looking for in the brain activity, or just generally making sure that what you're looking at is actually the activity of the brain. And so first you sort through these things, you filter the data, and then you kind of decide, how do I want to look at what remains? You know, how do I look at the data in question that's remaining? And people have found different ways of doing this, but just to ground this in something that we can all understand more easily, let's say, you know, you have a brick, and first you need to say, okay, I want to analyze this brick, but maybe the brick has some moss on it or something. And so you say, okay, well, I'm going to scrape the moss off because I just want to analyze the brick. And then you say, okay, well, what do I want to know about this brick? Maybe you want to know, how heavy is it? or how much space it takes up. And there's different ways that you can look at and test this brick. Okay, so why am I saying all of this? Maybe some of you are catching on. This is kind of exactly what we're doing in meditation practice. So we start by recognizing that our mind is, in most cases, going to be pretty messy and all over the place. And so we say, okay, let me get this settled. Let me calm things down so I can actually look at what I was intending to look at when I sat down here. And sometimes the reason that we engage with meditation practices at all is just to do that. It's just to say, okay, let me just separate the noise from the signal. So sometimes that's it. We stop there, and that's sufficient. The next thing that we can do, though, and the way that we do that, just to say, and I think everybody's on the same page about this, but you physically relax your body. You might start counting your breath, or saying some sort of mantra to yourself, or paying attention in some certain way to help your mind settle. And so this is like the filter. The next thing that you do is you want to take a look. You want to go in to look a little more fine-grained details of reality, or you want to kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture and get more perspective on the kind of larger formations that are happening in your mind. So zooming in, and again, thinking about brain activity is an interesting cognate. There's ways of looking at, okay, from one moment to the next. In mindfulness, we're always talking about moment-to-moment experience, but what does that really mean? Well, you can look at that at a brain activity level. You can look at it at an experiential level. In modern philosophy, sometimes we call this qualia, your kind of moment-to-moment individual little pieces or particles that make up your experience. So as you settle, you can start to look at some of those. Or you can zoom out and start to understand emotions that you're feeling, concepts that are popping up in your mind repeatedly. And you can review your life this way, or your values. Mindfulness as a skill or as a trait, it can really be used effectively either way. You can say, I want to zoom in more and really understand what's happening in my body. Or you might say, I want to zoom out more and reflect and review my life or review my feelings. And mindfulness is useful for both, but most of the time when we talk about mindfulness practice, we're more focused on zooming in. We're more focused on this moment-to-moment experience. The intention is to learn, and we can't always be in this, at least for a long time, but the intention is to learn one moment after the next, one little grain of sand of our experience after the next grain of sand of our experience. Just being fully with whatever the experience is. And mindfulness in this case is kind of like our scanner. It's our scanner for our mind. It's the way that we actually review this activity. So I'm probably not going to say anything new here, but everybody knows that that sounds great, and it's not always so easy. So the mind is very fickle, and it's very difficult to stick with these observations, with these kind of inner observations of one moment after the next. So you might have that for a second, and then you have some reaction, and you have a judgment about your experience. Ooh, that felt bad. I don't like that. Maybe that's related to this injury, or maybe that's related to my blood sugar. Something is wrong. And so we go from that really fine-grained experience to popping back out into this more either normal mind or kind of a bigger picture mind, which is really our judgments. And there's nothing wrong with our judgments, but it might not be what we're intending to do in that moment, and it might not be what's most useful. And it gets very difficult to see what's going on when we're constantly judging our experience, which some way, shape, or form, we most often are, even when we don't realize it. We're saying, this is a good experience, this is a bad experience, I prefer this. And so we're kind of cycling in this muddy state of unrest. And there's two antidotes that we've been working with so far. So the first one is just returning to relaxation. And you've heard me mention that a lot so far. Most often our judgments, even if it's a quote-unquote judgment or a good judgment or a judgment of something being good, it comes with some kind of tension that we can experience. And certainly, I think I won't surprise anybody saying this, our bad judgments, or our judgments of something being bad, they certainly come with a kind of tension. You can feel it in your body if you're paying attention. It doesn't feel very good. And so step one, this first antidote to this muddiness, is to relax, so we don't keep making more of a mess and cycling more. When we do that, when we relax, it's almost like there's a fire. You can think of this fire of this judgment, and it could spread and spiral us totally out of control mentally. And relaxing is like putting out the fire. Relaxing is like dousing it with water. And so in theory, that would be enough. But the only problem is that there's still somewhere where that fire came from. How did that fire emerge in the first place? So a good analogy for this would be that there's embers still remaining after you put this fire out. And at some point, probably pretty soon, because the mind works very quickly, those embers are going to catch something on fire again, as soon as they're given a little bit of fodder, a little bit of kindling. They'll catch on fire yet again. So we have a second antidote, which is also what we've been practicing so far, and that's the intention. Our intention is this second antidote. And the intention is actually what allows us to cool those embers. So the intention remains more constant throughout. So relaxation is like our positive or healthy or useful reaction to this messiness. And then our intention is like the ongoing cool breeze that can put out these embers. And it's not to say that the embers just go away right away. It's a slow process. But over time, they do cool more and more because we don't create more reactions. You can think about this from a Western psychology standpoint. This is sometimes called extinction also. So certain concepts or reactions, when you stop reacting to them, they don't keep perpetuating themselves. They settle over time. So touching our intention with our mind is what puts these embers at rest. That's why I like to say that mindfulness is a practice of intention rather than attention. That's kind of what separates mindfulness from being a mental exercise. It's a good mental exercise too. That's one level of it. But you don't need to stop there. If you bring intention in, it's much more than a mental exercise. It's a potentially transformative process, something that can help you rework your life. Okay, but back to these grains of sand. So we have these grains of sand, these little moment to moment experiences. And from a neuroscience perspective, if we think of those as the same as a micro state, that could happen up to 10 times per second, sometimes less, sometimes more, that our brain is recognizing these different moments. But who knows? Some Buddhist monks in certain traditions, they claim that they can sense up to 40 or 60 things per second. Uh, I've never done it, but who can say? Who can say? It doesn't particularly matter. We have these moment to moment experiences, and fundamentally, actually, all of them are the same. They're all made up of the same stuff. But our experience of them is different. We don't feel that they're all the same. And so as we start to cool the embers of judgment a little bit more, using our intention, we can start to see what's underneath the judgments. We start to feel that there's a feeling of pleasant or unpleasant. And sometimes we can even feel that there's really neither. There's something that's there that's not quite pleasant or unpleasant. And that's sometimes difficult to settle your mind into that place in one meditation or even in one half-day retreat. But if you do continue to sit still and quietly, you do get the chance to see these feelings, this feeling of pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, pop up. It's kind of like a firework. You can think of this sitting quietly in your own experience. There's almost this embodied sense of like different little fireworks that are going off, these little reactions. Feels good, doesn't feel good. It's in this part of my body, it's in that part of my body. Mostly when I refer to this firework, I'm thinking about kind of it's a visual analogy, but you can think of it as an experience in your own body. So you're imagining that you can almost feel fireworks or these different little experiences that echo and then slowly fade. And this is the moment for attention to shine. So we talked about intention. This is the moment for attention to shine. So what do we do when we feel such a thing, a firework, or a sense of this is pleasant or this is not pleasant, or this is neither? So the key when you're feeling these things is just to watch that feeling pop up, morph, change, move, and slowly fade away. And not only to feel them, but to feel them with your intention, which is kind of a protection against your judgments. Your intention is almost like counteracting your judgments. It's counteracting your judgments catching fire. So I feel some feeling right now, for example. I feel a slight sense of cold. It's unpleasant. And I can feel that. I feel where I feel cold in my torso, and then I feel this sense of, I don't like this, go up to my head. And I can just sit there and watch it lovingly, and it disappears eventually. Now, if I was really cold, it might not disappear, and I should probably just put a coat on. And that's important too. But when we're sitting in meditation, we have all sorts of different little experiences come up, and they will pop and sparkle and fall away. And we just continue to watch. I'd love to actually ask, who here likes fireworks? Just show of hands. Okay. Mixed bag, mixed bag. All right, for those of you who like fireworks, have you ever had a firework experience that you didn't like and you wished that it weren't happening? Okay, yeah, yeah. All right, great. And I can ask the same thing in reverse. I'll spare us the show of hands, but the point being here is that, again, sometimes the fireworks are good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes they feel good or bad, perhaps might be a better way to put it. And our reactions are always changing, even to the same quote unquote fireworks. Quote unquote same. They're not going to be the same from one day to the next or from 1 hour to the next. If you just continue to watch these fireworks, let it settle within your own body, doing your best to not be disturbed, and where you are disturbed, just relaxing and coming back to your intention. If you're able to keep doing this, you'll find that even the fireworks themselves, they'll also cause more fireworks. It's kind of this infinite loop, right? You have this feeling, and then you have a reaction to that feeling, and then you have a reaction to the feeling about the feeling, and it can go on forever. It would be mind-boggling to try to stop all of the different feelings or just take care of them all in some way. And that's why we have our intention. Our intention just shines through all of them. And wherever we feel them, wherever they're at the top of our mind, we just keep settling down, down, down. And the judgments start to get really quiet. And there's less and less judgments over time. And this takes time. Sometimes a half-day retreat, sometimes it takes a week-long retreat. Sometimes it can happen in a single session. But things get more and more quiet. Eventually it can be an astounding, amazing, pleasant, quiet, silent, spacious place that can be really profoundly impactful, very relieving to know that that's there underneath all of our judgments and discomforts and wants and needs. Other times, that's a little bit too lofty of a goal. And we're not going to get to the bottom of our judgments. Most times, perhaps, let's say. And so you can think about those times like preparing for your firework viewing another time. So maybe you're just saying, today the best that I've got is just not judging myself for being frazzled or sleepy or some other way. Your mind might not be very sharp, or maybe it's too sharp, and as a result, it's too difficult to watch these little fireworks go by. This is not a lesser state of meditation by any stretch of the imagination. This is actually some of the best practice because, as everybody here knows, that's what most of life is like. Most of life is not quiet and deep and insightful and clear. Hopefully through practice, more and more of it can be. But most of life is messy and frazzled and sleepy and not liking the way that things are all the time. All these little judgments, internal and external. And so when that's where we are in meditation practice, wonderful.